G'day, legends, and welcome to Celtic Down Under Pot Noodle. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me tonight are Willie and Liam. How are you, Willie?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Just enjoying sort of watching football again and getting back to the normality of getting up at silly o'clock to watch a game of football. So yeah.
And how's things in Japan, Liam? Looks like Liam's frozen up.
Can you guys hear me? Okay?
Your sound's not working, Liam. Yeah. So we'll crack on anyway. While Liam tries to fix that. So everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Celtic Down Under podcast. Appreciate all your support. We've got our shows every week. We go live on a Monday night and on a Thursday night. So we've got the pot noodle on a Monday, and we've got the Thursday sesh same time on a Thursday. So we'll basically cover the news that happens between now and Thursday, preview the weekend's game. Tonight we'll just rehash a little bit on the weekend's game and talk about a few other topics. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. If you can, in the comments, let us know your thoughts on the game and chuck them all in there, and we'll bring some comments up later on in the podcast. But before we get into it, Willie, we'll just want everyone, if you're listening and you haven't already subscribed to the Celtic Down Under podcast in your preferred podcast app, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, so when we go live, you get the notification. And yeah, we're just trying to grow the channel on both of those platforms, so we appreciate that. So Celtic 3, Aberdeen 1. Willie, what was your thoughts for the game when you saw the starting lineup?
Yeah, I was a little surprised not to see Hatate come back in. I thought Turnbull did well last weekend, but I kind of thought it might have been just a little one-off game for him. I thought Aberdeen would have been a more suited game for Hatate, but he went with the same 11 that served him the week before, so you can't really complain. To be honest, it was just more a personal thing. I thought Hatate would come back in there, but yeah, it was a good game. We showed sort of through the game that when the chips are down, we can play dirty as well as play football. So it was a good old fashioned slobber knocker, as JR used to say on the wrestling night. So I actually really enjoyed the game, Mike. You know what I mean? Even though we weren't in the midfield, we weren't looking too cohesive at all. I think Turnbull showed that he wasn't in it at all at this game. I think the only thing I seen him do of noteworthy was get booked and then hooked at half time. So, but yeah, it's good to see that when other teams are coming to go toe to toe with us, we have that fight to go toe to toe back with them. Mate. So, like I say, I enjoyed the game.
Yeah, for me, when I was looking at it, Willie, it was like I had the same question for you. What was the midfield going to be? Was Turnbull going to keep his spot? Was O'Reilly going to keep his spot? Or was Hatate going to come in? So I think that was the only real question mark going in. The back line picks itself. The front three picks itself. We don't really have another keeper there. Joe Hart's the only option for us. So, yeah, it was all going to come down. Would Hatate come back in? So you can't really fault Rodgers for sticking with a team that got the job done the week prior. So, it was nothing too out of the ordinary there. But throw to you, Liam, for your thoughts when you saw the lineup come out and your thoughts overall on the game. And Liam, it's not happening, Liam. Your sound's not coming through. So my overall thoughts on the game, Willie, like you were saying, was that I thought the thing was we all knew it was going to be a physical game up with Aberdeen, and it doesn't surprise me at the end of the day that they tried that. It was good to actually see them go out there and try and play some football, though. It wasn't as turgid a game as when you had Derek McInnes running the show and it was just, like rugby players with a football in the middle of the field trying to take us out. So it was for me, I look at it and go, the frustrating parts were, every time a foul went against us, they were holding the collar or bumping the ball away or whatever, which was pretty stock standard for an Aberdeen team. But overall, wasn't anything too unexpected. I think Barry Robson coaches that team pretty well, and they're gonna, if they play the way they did against us on the weekend against the Huns in particular, then there's gonna be it's gonna be a tough ask for any team going up to Pittodrie this season.
I kind of think I think this team Aberdeen will give Rangers a good run for the money when they go up there. So it'd be interesting to see. They always raise their game when Rangers do go to town, so it'll be interesting to see what this team can do against them. Because they're certainly a physical outfit. They didn't shy away from the tackles. They were, like I said earlier, they're prepared to go toe to toe with us, and we went toe to toe back with them. It was a really good match to watch. Actually, the neutrals, anyone who's a neutral tuning in that game would have thoroughly enjoyed it. I just think in the midfield, we're still trying to find that right balance to play the way Brendan Rodgers wants us to play, and give it a few more games, and we'll eventually start getting it right.
Yeah, that's what I reckon as well, Willie. Realistically, our weakest spot in the team at the moment is the part of the team I thought would be our strongest, which is our midfield. Across the back line, we're a bit stretched with numbers and people out injured and whatnot, and players leaving and so on. And up forward, we lost Jota, but we've still got a good quality strike force and a bunch of wingers there. So I thought midfield would be our biggest strength, but players like Kalmack is completely in all sorts at the moment. And then on top of that, you've got Hatate's, it doesn't seem to be suiting the way he wants him to play. So, and then it's good to see Turnbull out there doing a bit of work, but then even he didn't look too at it on the weekend. So, it's I think O'Reilly, it's pretty much our best midfielder at the moment, and he was, in my eyes, he was the best player we had on the weekend.
Yeah, I've got O'Reilly down as a man of the match as well. He was at the heart of everything. It just seemed everything was going through him. He was fighting for every ball. I really enjoyed his performance. It seems that Brendan Rodgers is playing a style of football that he's really up for the challenge of taking on. And it's good to see. I also liked the look of Holm when he came on. Thiago, I thought he did really, really well when he came on. And then Hatate as well for his little cameo role. I thought Callum McGregor's performance sort of picked up a little bit once Hatate came onto the pitch and Turnbull was off. I just kind of think the game passed Turnbull by quite a bit, actually.
That's the problem I see, Willie. I think Turnbull in the midfield, he's a great player. As Mahesh says in the comments every time we talk about him, these ex-biased out of all our midfielders and all that sort of stuff. But for me, I look at it and go, our best midfield tends to be O'Reilly, Hatate, and McGregor together, because they just work well and play well, and one strength covers the other's weaknesses and so on. So, overall, though, I'd like to see Holm start to get a few more minutes. I think he'll be knocking on the door, wanting to get a starting berth pretty soon if current players keep the form that they've got. But what we'll do before we get into the we'll talk about the goals scored overall, Willie, and conceded, and then we'll jump into some comments. So, do you want to give us your thoughts on all the goals?
Yeah, well, the first goal was the cross into the box. Dyson Maeda gets above everybody, one of the shortest men on the pitch, gets above everyone, knocks it down, and Abada's just there with a little tap-in. And the referee and the linesman both sort of had the view that it was offside, but VAR sort of cleared that one up quite quickly. He was clearly onside. I think Miovski's goal, it was a long clearance out from their keeper, found Duke, who he beat CCV, which isn't something that happens very, very often. But he managed to cut the ball back to Miovski, who was found he got inside of Narowski. But I thought Narowski was at fault for the goal, but then watching it back, I look at Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor tries to step off Miovski whilst Duke is making his run to the near post, and he just lets him go. And I think Narowski was making a run in to try and help Joe Hart out. Should a second ball fall, he'd be able to clear it. And I don't think he gets the shout to say, look, there's a man on there. So Kyogo and our second goal, just playing that offside rule perfectly, where he can just sort of linger his way in there and dawdle his way back, and the boy Devlin puts in a slack header back the way, and Kyogo's just there and does what Kyogo does best and puts the ball in the back of the net. Our third was the goal from O'Reilly. It was great work from Yang inside the box, get the determination to get to the byline and cut it back. And O'Reilly's just there to side foot it straight into the net. Great all round. Some great goals there to see. And yeah, good. All round happy with the way we're finishing. But like I say, there just seems to be that lack of cohesion in the middle of the pitch. We're getting there. We will get there. Like.
Yeah, so just something you touched on there, Willie. Like, you've pretty much covered everything I would have said about the goals as well. So I'm not going to, carry on too much about them in terms of, the offside, which wasn't. It was good to see VAR actually do its job for us for once. But the key thing, the two things I wanted to touch on were, you touched on it with their goal. You've got to track the runner. And Naroski was trying to get back to get in a position so Hart can cover one side and then Naroski can cover the back side of the goal or whatever, the other side to where Hart was. So he can cover him, as you said, trying to help him out, which was spot on. So I think it was Greg Taylor not tracking the runner was more at fault for that goal than Naroski was. But at the end of the day, what's that, their second game playing alongside each other? They've got to build that relationship, and when the call comes, and the question is, if Taylor's sprinting full pelt and he's yelling with how loud that crowd was at Aberdeen as well at the weekend, and then you've got Naroski coming in trying to understand Taylor screaming over the top of a bunch of Aberdeen fans, it's going to be hard for him to understand it. He's probably still trying to figure out what the lingo means. So yeah, it's I'm not making excuses for him, but I think that might have been a factor. And then talking about O'Reilly's goal at the end, I was just looking at the YouTube channel before we jumped on, Celtics one, and there was an interview with O'Reilly post-match, and he was saying that last season he was getting more forward into the box, and then now he's more holding back and he's able to time his runs when he wants to go and he's coming onto it. That goal that he scored was a pivotal moment, like 6 minutes to go, something, I think it was 6 or 7 minutes to go, and their crowd was starting to get up and about. But it was the way he ran onto it and just ghosted in and just bang. I just put it in from just around the penalty spot area. It's a very Rogic-esque goal, especially against Aberdeen, because that's where Tommy always used to pop up in that situation in those sort of games. So that's what that sort of goal reminded me of.
Yeah, like you say, it was perfectly timed too. Aberdeen was sort of had the wind in their sails at that point, and they seemed to be the team that was pushing the hardest. Like, I mean, I know we've all had our faults with Joe Hart over the last few weeks, and we're saying we need a new keeper, but I thought Joe Hart played pretty well there on Sunday. Sorry, it seems to be a big difference in him when he's able to get out there and sort of clear his lines too, like without having to try and play tiki-taka football at the back. Like, so I think, yeah, to just sort of circle back to O'Reilly, like you say, it was perfectly timed. It, like, because Aberdeen did have the wind in their sails and it just knocked the stuffing out of them, and that was them. They were floored from that point on, and there's only ever going to be one winner from there.
Just got a comment on our Twitter account, or X as it's known now, from Tanaka Khan, saying it's a little novelty to be actually watching us live for once instead of getting us on audio. So shout out to you, Tanaka. And yes, your comment about Shinny's invisibility cloak was your highlight of the game. 100%. Love it. We'll bring up some of the comments now, Willie, before we crack on to the Carter Vickers injury that we've got to talk about. So Andrew Galea was good win, tough game. And then Andrew also mentioned that the midfield isn't working, letting the opposition dominate for periods of the game. If that keeps happening, it's going to be messy in Europe. And I'm not talking about Lionel. I'm saying it's not going to be fun. Mickey Moynihan, morning boys, a well-fought game, and we showed resilience and adaptation to take control of the game at key points, with BR changes being influential. RL77, Turnbull weakens the team when we don't have the ball. I don't think him and O'Reilly work well together on that when we're on the defensive side of it in the middle of the park. Michael Ross, we won 3-1 at a tough venue with a new system, new players. Perhaps we need to calm down, but I understand the fear with Europe looming large on the horizon. Then we'll keep scrolling through here. So Andrew Gallez, the role of the forward midfielder seems to change depending on who's playing it. Yep. RL77 is for Liam's in a galaxy far, far away. Yep, he's we're having some technical difficulties again. Bloody thing that we use for it. It's messed us around last week as well. Michael Ross, I'm a Turnbull fan. He has his uses, but he was poor yesterday. Let's bring up this one here from James Livingston. Kelmack tried to do too much yesterday. He's been drawn into roles he shouldn't have been, and this led to him being a bit too frantic rather than his usual midfield fulcrum. Andrew is saying that the forward midfielder is too far away. What do you got, Michael Ross? So I watched the game with a few Dons fans, and they did not share Robson's view that they went toe-to-toe. We all see a game differently. Yeah, I thought they were decent for large parts of the game. What was your thoughts, Willie?
Yeah, I was quite surprised by Aberdeen. I mean, we've got a really good record over Aberdeen, and a lot of Rangers fans say that Aberdeen and Celtic, Aberdeen just roll over and get their belly rubbed by Celtic, but they certainly didn't do that this at the weekend. Like, they certainly were there to show that they were willing to play the game of football against us. Like, and the guy, what's his name, Devlin, he should have been booked several times over, but for some reason Kevin Clancy just let him off with it the whole time. But as I've said earlier, I thought it was a great game of football to watch. Like, two teams who just really wanted to go at it and had a right proper ding dong. Like,
yep, I have to agree with you on that, Willie. Robert Gibson, that game was about as easy to digest as a raw turnip. I'll take your word for it, Robert. Not that I'd try that. Michael Ross, Odin looks good. The fact that he hardly misplaced a pass has impressed me. Patrick McLaughlin, I'd start Kelmack, O'Reilly, Holm in the midfield versus Killy. I wouldn't have any complaints with that at all. I think I touched on it earlier where I said that I think it's not long till Holm will be challenging for a starting spot. What do we got here? Michael Ross, I'd like to see Awada get him in midfield. I don't think that'll happen until we get a few more bodies in and we can push him from defence into the midfield. His coverage there. But yeah, I think we're just going through here. What do we got here? Peter Stevenson, McGregor's playing rubbish. Anybody else would have been dropped. Stop talking rubbish because McGregor isn't playing well. He's weak and isn't winning his battles and didn't tackle, save his life. Drop McGregor. I don't know who's talking rubbish. Actually, both said he's not in form. So I don't know what you're talking about there. Please clarify that for us. And yeah, we'll bring up onto our next topic here, which was about CCV's injury. So we've got Patrick McLaughlin. Maybe we should have given CCV the extra week or two to recovery to begin with. Him coming back was from his knee injury, I think it was, and he's done his hamstring. So Rogers was saying after the game that he brought him off as a precaution because slightly twings. So that being the case, hamstrings are a funny one. They can either be just a slight strain or you get in early and you're out 7 to 10 days, or it can be a bad one and you're out for 6 to 8 weeks. So what's your thoughts on what's happened there, Willie?
yeah, we definitely don't want to be losing CCV for any length of time. He is a pivotal part of the way Celtic play. He is an awesome defender and probably one of our top players. Like, and as you say, 7 to 10 days is going to be the minimum he's out for. Our fixture next week is Kilmarnock away, so that'll be on the plastic pitch. So I can't see him featuring in that in any way, shape, or form if he's got any sort of doubts about his knee or his hamstring. So I think next week we'll probably see Welsh and Narodsky as well. So it's concerning. It definitely is concerning because as you said, the worst case scenario is 6 to 8 weeks out, and that's a long time for CCV to be missing, like, especially with games coming up in Europe and one in Snake Mountain as well.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's vitally important that we get him fit, but I don't want to rush him back. So yeah, as Willie's saying, we're playing, away at Killy on the weekend. So yeah, he'd definitely be out for that. And then is that the one over at Ibrox, isn't it? So if you could get him fit and back for that, great. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens over the next week or two because, well, you've got Carter Vickers is out. So I want to know, Willie, how you thought in the second half the centre-back pairing of Welsh and Narosky went.
I was pleasantly surprised with Narosky. He's very, very comfortable on the ball, and his possession, his passing as well is it's to the man. It's straight to the guy's feet. There's no messing around with it. He certainly looks comfortable in there. I don't think Welsh did too badly either, to be honest with you. For a guy who's been out in the cold for so long to come in the way he has, he played pretty well for the 45 minutes in a very physically demanding encounter. Like, so I wouldn't have any qualms about the two of them going back in as our pairing for the game against Kilmarnock next week, because on the showing in the second half, I would say I was pleased enough with it.
The funny thing is, like, last season I learnt that Welsh is actually like 6'1" or something like that. He's a lot taller than he actually looked out there. So every time I picture him, I'm like, oh, he's short, because I'd think back and he had Julian next to him or Chris Iron next to him who were like 6'6" and 6'5". So it's like, oh, he's short. But then you look at it and you go, Carter Vickers comes in. Carter Vickers is 6 foot, so he's taller than him. So it's like, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I'd be happy with Welsh being an option in the league. I don't have a problem with it. Rogers, after the game, has said he wants to keep him around for the season and that sort of stuff, and he wants to stay at the club, so that's good. He could potentially be a 4-string centre back, but I wouldn't want to be relying on him in Europe. But to have him at Ibrox with their team of hammer throwers, that they're bringing in all their 6-footers, at least it's not like we're going to be having to bring in an undersized, centre back like what was his name, Shevchenko back in the day, who was like 5'10" or something like that, or 5'9" or something. At least we've got a decent size of him there. So I think the pairing worked pretty well overall. Welsh looked pretty comfortable over on the right centre back position. Narosky looks comfortable on the left centre back. So it's just a matter of us getting. We've got to get to the point where we just start to get a consistent lineup across the back there. But it's a matter of getting players fit, getting players back. Like getting Alistair Johnson back fit will help. Getting, Bernabei actually waking up for his alarm and coming to training helps when he's on the bench. And then you look at it and go, well, looks like we're like what I'm going to talk about as a next topic is Gustav Lagerbielke. Looks like he'll be coming in pretty bloody soon. So you put him in there, and then that rounds you out to having, some fair rotation. If you count Scales and Kobayashi, you got 6 centre backs at the club, so you've got plenty of depth there. So for me, I'm happy going with Welsh and Narosky the next week or two, but in Europe, not the way forward. What do you think for Europe, Willie?
Yeah, I think for Europe, we really, really need to see CCV coming back. Him and Narosky would be my preferred pick to be playing in Europe. But as you say, the boy Lagerbielke is coming in. It'd be interesting to see what he's got about him, because nobody really knows an awful lot about him. He's done very well in the Swedish leagues. He's shown up well in stats and that as well over there, and we're paying well over the odds for him. So that'll be interesting to see. But my biggest concern about the defence at the moment is left back. I thought Taylor was pretty woeful against Aberdeen there at the weekend, and I think it's probably time for Bernabei to get a little bit of a run in the team. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Chad.
Just looking at the comment here, RL77, it's time to talk about Taylor. It's like he's prompting you, Willie. Perfect segue. Thanks for that, buddy. Mickey Moynihan, must we talk about him? I just look at it and go, I think Taylor suited Ange's system as inverting better than the way Brendan uses the fullbacks. I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like, he's not going to cut it in Europe. And I was saying all through the off season that, okay, he was borderline my player of the year. Taylor was last year. But for the Champions League, and I said this last season as well, we need that guy as that step up above him. Like, if I look at our right back situation, Ralston will do the job for us domestically, but Johnson has that something different about him that once he's fit, he'll do it domestically. But in Europe, I'm not worried about him being our starting right back in the slightest. It's the same with the rest of our defence, but left back, if Taylor has to start in Europe, I'm worried because teams will target him like they did in Europe last year. And it's like, well, how are we going to adjust on this? That was why I was saying, like, if you go and sign Geordie Boss from Melbourne City, I know he's not a well-known in Europe, but he's starting week in, week out in Belgium now, and he's like a 6-foot left back. And he's just up and down. He's just an athlete, absolute animal, like absolute thoroughbred of a player. Like, maybe that's what we need. Or we need to go get, there's another guy, Libby Kasachi, who's a New Zealand left back, who's playing in Europe. These are guys we could afford and get them in and could help us in Europe the same way that Johnston is. I'm sure there's other players within Europe that I'm not aware of. I'd have to jump on a Football Manager and have a look or whatever, or get the stats people to throw a few names at us. But yeah, left back needs strengthening for the Champions League 100%.
Yeah, without doubt. I don't think Taylor's good enough to be Newton first to be playing in the Champions League. We've said it last week, I think, week in, week out, even in Scotland, he's targeted. Teams will hunker down and shell that long ball straight on top of him and hope that he'll either knock it down into their path, their forwards path, or out of play to get a throw in and try and hit us with a long throw and choose a wee set piece sort of situation like that out of it. But I'm getting a little bit concerned about the way he's been playing this season. It's pretty clear to see that Brendan Rodgers' style of football does not suit him at all in any way, shape, or form. So I think next week it could be time to give Bernabei a little run out. You've got the game against Kilmarnock next week, and then another game against St Johnstone the week after that, and then it's off to Mordor for a game. So, but hopefully they'll be looking at bringing in another option to go in there and work with them before the transfer window closes. But we'll wait to see on that one, I'm afraid, because the transfer, all the rumours around left back situation seem to be a little quiet at the moment. Hopefully there is a lot of work getting done in that area in the background.
According to the In the Know agents, we're a long way down the road with 3 players, 3 different positions. That's all the talk I'm hearing from multiple sources, not just the Twitter people, but a few other people. One of them's Lagerbielke, who we'll go to and start talking about now, Willie, but apparently there's a couple others to come in. So I'm hoping one of them's a keeper, maybe that Livakovic, if he's still available. We get Lagerbielke in and the left back. If we do that, I'd be like, happy days. And I think us as a fan base will just go and just relax a little bit, and off we go. But talking about Lagerbielke coming in for £3 million, we know Carter Vickers is hurt. We were just talking about, would you go with Welsh and Narowski next week at Killy? The question I've got for you, if Lagerbielke comes in and he comes in and he's training and he's ready to go, would you throw him straight into the Wolves on a plastic pitch next week down in Ayrshire, or would you keep Welsh and Narowski together and bring him off the bench if need be?
No, I would probably go with Welsh and Narowski because they've had a couple of weeks together on the training pitch. They might have a little bit more understanding than what Narowski and Lagerbielke would get if they're just thrown in out of the cold. And that plastic pitch, that's like playing on Lego. That's a cruel way to give any player a debut. Yeah, off you go out in there and have a shot on that. Like, nah. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, if I'm honest with you. Nah, I think it'll definitely be Welsh and Narowski for me.
Don't they play on plastic pitches in Scandinavia, though? It'd be just like every other run of the day over there.
I think the plastic pitches over there might be a slightly better quality because they'll probably water them because they're not absolute. Trying to say a nice word, a nasty word. I'm trying to find a nicer sort of way to say something nasty there, but they dry the pitches out for when Celtic and Rangers come to town. There's no hoses going in them for about a week before the game, like, so it's all sticky, and when the ball bounces, it bounces complete opposite way that which would on a natural surface. So yeah, like I say, I just think it might be a little bit too nasty to throw a guy in on that pitch for a debut.
You were talking early on, Willie, about not knowing too much about Lagerbielke and stuff like that. So I was looking at it before, and apparently the last 18 months, he's just gone from strength to strength in the Swedish league. He's probably they say one of the best young defender in the league. He's been one of the better centre halves over there, to the point that he played well in the Europa Conference League last year with Elfsborg, and apparently Ajax were looking for him once they got rid of Bassi there and looking at him. So we've got in early to seal the deal. So if a club like Ajax is looking to bring him down, they don't go and recruit like that outside of their own academy unless they think they're getting someone special. I know it looks a bit of an oxymoron saying that because, I was just talking about them, selling Bassi, who they got from outside of their academy, but still it's he's got something about him if a club like that's looking at it.
Yeah, he does. He certainly does have something about him. I mean, I think he was out on loan from Elfsborg to some lower team, and he was Player of the Year for them apparently. And he put in some really impressive performances. And 15 games into this season, he's already got 2 goals. So at 6'3", he's got the height about him, which is something that Brendan Rodgers was looking to address. We seem to be a little small. I think it was one of his original thoughts when he came back in. So that sort of fits that mold. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what this guy's got about him, because we do have a good track record of Swedish centre defenders. Like we had Mjällby, we've had Starfelt, we had Majstorovic, who did reasonably well up until his cheek shattered. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see what he's got about him, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's the old no-nonsense sort of guys you get out of the Scandinavia, because even when I come in and he had his growth spurt, we signed him as a midfielder, ends up as a centre-back, and he did well for us as well. I think the only Scandinavian guy, what was Thomas Rogney like again? I don't remember. I remember the name. I used to love him on Football Manager, but for the life of me, I can't remember if he actually did anything decent for us at the club. But most of the other, Scandinavian defenders we signed tend to do pretty well.
Yeah, Thomas Rogney was quite highly thought of when he was coming through the ranks. Like I don't think he made the breakthrough. Like he ended up moving on. I think he went to Barnsley or somewhere like that. Like, and I think he's still knocking about that English Championship, but playing at a reasonable enough sort of level. Like, but I do know he was highly thought of. Like when they did sign him, they thought he was going to be going on to some great things. Like, just didn't materialise from him.
Last I heard, he was at Sunderland, so that says it all. But yeah, it'll be good to see what comes with Lagerbielke coming in. As you said, 6'3", gives us some of that height that Brendan's after. It's highly regarded, and it'll be good to see what goes on there. I was hoping Liam would be on today, but technical difficulties, he's bowed out. So I was going to ask him a couple of topics here, but we'll go to your thoughts instead here, Willie. What does the arrival of Gustav Lagerbielke mean for Liam Scales and Yuki Kobayashi?
For me, I would say it's time up for Liam Scales. I think he'll be moved on, and I think Kobayashi will probably get a loan move. I'm not sure where you would put him. Would you try and put him back to the J League, or would you try and put him out to like the English Championship or a Scottish team? But with Kobayashi, he's certainly a decent player. He's certainly a decent defender. He just lacks that physicality, and when things start to get physical, he seems to bow out quite quickly. So he needs to go away and learn the sort of the darker arts of the game. But as for Liam Scales, I think he's a decent enough defender, but I just don't think he's quite Celtic's class. And if Aberdeen could find $500,000, I think that would be a great move for him to go back up there.
Yeah, the talk that Aberdeen's coming back in for him on loan again. So once Lagerbielke's in the door, Scales is going back on loan with an option to buy or something like that. But I said a couple of weeks ago, within the league, I wouldn't mind Scales. Like he could say where we were talking earlier today about Welsh and Naroski as a back pairing. If you were to play Naroski and and Scales together in the back line, I wouldn't be too upset about it in the league, except for say maybe against a certain mob over at Ibrox. But like if he goes back on loan up there, it's great. I was thinking, you go Andrew Galea in the comments here saying Hibs need a centre half. I was thinking, where would you send Kobayashi out on loan? That could actually be a winner because he'd still, how far is it from Glasgow to Edinburgh? About an hour or so away. It's not far down the road, so it could still work there. I actually think Kobayashi will be sold and Scales will go on loan, Willie. That's my thoughts. But I was talking to one of my mates who's a Millwall fan yesterday, and I was like, he was saying, they need a centre back. And in my mind, I'm thinking, take Kobayashi. That'll toughen him up. If he goes down to Millwall and he survives that, he'll be able to handle himself in Scotland. So I think realistically, more than likely, Scales on loan, Kobayashi will get sold, and then we might even potentially bring in that Xavier, whatever his last name is, Mumbanya or whatever it is from where we've been linked with all off season from Volendam or something, if he's still available.
Yeah, I think it's Xavier Mbayamba. He's another one who's in the 6'4" category. He's young enough. He's 2-footed. Certainly fit the mold of what we're looking for in the player trading model going forward. Like you get the sort of vibe of Virgil van Dijk off him when you look at him in the pictures and stuff like that. So yeah, there's certainly, like I think Brendan said it himself. He's not committed to the Lagerbielke one. He said there are other irons in the fire, but it's certainly looking like Lagerbielke will come in. But who's to say they won't take another guy in there too, just to keep everyone on their toes? Because the one thing you do need at a club of Celtic size is competition for places. Like just having 2 first-team starters and then a couple of guys behind them who aren't going to challenge for the first team doesn't really make much sense to me. Like,
yeah, I'd have to agree there. So Mickey Moynihan in the comments, what about the Austrian team we're linked with for a Kobe loan? Hadn't even thought of that. That's actually a good shout. It's a fair shout at all. Andrew Galea, Kobayashi might turn to Kevin Muscat at Millwall. Okay, hope not. And then Andrew Reid, Rogers made Boyata look decent. Yeah, Boyata. Don't bring back those memories. Him in Europe, please no. Don't remind us. So, off the back of that there, Willie, we've got Bosun Lorwell is off to Fleetwood Town on loan for the upcoming season. What's your thoughts on this loan move? For me, I think it'll be good for him to get down there and progress under Bruni for a season. But what's your thoughts on that?
no, I think that's a very, very good move for Bosun Lowell. He's certainly a decent player. Well, I've seen him when he came on. He got a good run out here down under, like, and he looks comfortable on the ball. He's big, he's physical, he's imposing. So he's turning in really, really good performances for the B team. But he's playing in that Lowland League, and all you learn down there is how to run away from a clugger. You know what I mean? It's not a great level of football at all. So for him to go down to Fleetwood Town, it's the next step for him in his career. And I really hope this move works out for him. And I hope Bruni takes him under his wing and sort of gives him the lessons he needs to learn to come back up to us to really challenge for a first team place with us. Because I do think he's one that we could really, really make the mark as when he's ready to do it. Like,
the other thing as well, Willie, is he ticks enough boxes now to, I think, classify as association trained or one of our club trained guys for Europe. And he's got the height, he's got the size. It's just getting the dark arts under his sleeve and get everything all sorted out and all that sort of stuff. So getting down there, season playing in England, first team football, I think it's a good move for the kid. And, he gets a development and Bruni teaches him a thing or two and then gets him back up the road next season. realistically, with all the talk here early on about Scales potentially being off, and so Scales goes, Kobayashi goes, you've got Carter Vickers, you've got Naroski, you've got Lagerbielke, you've got Welsh at the moment. You bring him back as your fifth centre back. I'd be happy with that. Like, it's a pathway. Go from the B team down to Bruni, up into the B, that kid on the bench developing, coming through the role that Welsh is playing. So I wouldn't complain with that pathway. That's, at least it's a plan forward. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he progresses this season. I normally don't pay too much attention to our guys on loan, but I'll be keeping an eye on Fleetwood a little bit here and there, because they've also got Montgomery, I think.
Yeah, I did see that Montgomery's gone away down there too on loan. So Scott Brown's using the old connections to bring them up. But there's also the Austrian team as well. It'd been worth keeping an eye on. There's a few. I think there's 3 boys going over there. Joey Dawson, the goalkeeper. I can't remember his name now. The name escapes me.
Olawayemi.
He's gone. Yeah, Olawayemi, and I think there's another guy gone over there. So it's interesting to see the sort of pathways Celtic are looking at, because it's become pretty abundant that this lowland league isn't cutting the mustard. And if you look at teams like from Portugal and Spain and other countries, I mean, they all have B teams that are allowed to play up until like the second division or the first. I think Portugal are in the first division, and that's their glass ceiling. They're not allowed to go any higher, and that's great pathways for them. But with us here in Scotland, we've got this close shot where the league, all the teams in the league like to keep their status to themselves, and they don't like any sort of change. Change is bad as far as they go. But yeah, good luck to the boys that are out on loan. And it's their chance. I mean, they will be watched by the scouts and that. So, and if they start churning in really good performance, Brendan Rodgers might take a wee flight down to Fleetwood or a flight over to Belgium, Austria, sorry, to have a little look at them, see how they're getting on in person. And good luck to them, as I say.
Yeah, I think that's a good pathway at the end of the day there, Willie. So I'm just trying to bring something up quickly on my phone, because I'm just looking. I'm keeping an eye out in case they announce Lagerbielke while we're live here. But just wanted to bring up another thing that we're seeing a lot of talk about on Twitter and on the Facebook groups and that sort of stuff. But Rare Hatate to Brighton rumours have come back again. So I was going to ask Liam what's been reported in Japan on this, but at the end of the day, do you think there's anything in it, Willie, about Hatate potentially going down there? Because I look at it and go, Brighton's just sold Moises Caicedo for £115 million to Chelsea. They're after a midfielder. Matoma's one of Hatate's best mates, and there's been rumours of them looking at him for ages, and De Zerbi has said that he does rate the player. So do you think that's a possible thing that we're going to have to tolerate in the media, in particular, all the red tops just trying to talk a sale into happening? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we all know Rio Hatate is going to go for big money one day, and if the Caicedo guy deal goes through to Chelsea or Liverpool, I don't know which way it's going to go. Then there's a big hole in Brighton's midfield, and they have fancied him, and they've been watching him. So it would be foolish or naive even to think that they won't come knocking and see what sort of price we'll put on his head to see if he can go or not. I know he's picked up a little bit of a calf strain at the weekend, and there's a lot of body language experts out there now telling us that his head's gone and he's not in it anymore. But I would like to think he's around for the rest of the season, because he is pivotal to us. And as we talk about the European games that are going to come up, I think we really, really need someone of his quality in that number 10 role, just to make sure that we're getting the sort of attacking out balls that we need, because I don't think Turnbull will be the answer when we go into Europe. I would be a bit fearful. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd look at it and go, if he was to leave, we're going to get a fair chunk of change. I'd be asking for more than the Tierney and Jota money for him, especially when you know that the way teams, when we go to try and buy a player in Scotland, they know we're cashed up and they put that Celtic surcharge on. We should be going, if we're going to sell Hatate down there, whether it's to, I've got a comment here, So Brighton will be in for him. Robert Gibson is Hatate misses his uncle Ange. So whichever one of those teams, whether it's Brighton or Spurs, if they come in for him, we've got to put the EPL tax on top of it, and also know that these guys have a whole bunch of cash burning a hole in their pocket. So the way everyone in Scotland, tries to rip us, we've got to rip them. If they want him, 30 million is the absolute floor. Turnbull will not be the answer for Hatate if he moves on. Long term, I agree with Michael Ross. Odin is the answer in terms of that position, the way he plays. But if Hatate was to move on, I would love us to just go out there, smash the Scottish transfer record. I know Roger said it won't happen, but who was that guy at Young Boys we've been linked with all off season? The central midfielder?
The boy Fabian Ryder, yeah, he's I think there's 15 million for him, 21-year-old, 2-footed central midfielder. Like I've watched a few videos on YouTube. I'm not one for basing my judgment on a wee highlights reel, but some of the balls you see on that highlights reel, they plays in, Kyogo would just relish on that style of play. Like, so if Hatate does go, like you say, 30 million, 15 million in for Ryder, then you're 15 million up on the whole deal. So it would make sense on that sort of side of it. But unless you're going to get somebody of that quality in, then selling Hatate and not getting the quality in might be very, very detrimental going forward.
And that's the business model, Willie. You get a guy in, you spend 1.5 million on him, you sell him for heaps for 30, you then go and spend 15 on Ryder, get him in, having Odin playing behind him is like to push him for a role, knowing that in a couple of years' time you'll be selling 18 months, 2 years tops with Ryder, and then you'll be selling him for even bigger cash again. And then Odin becomes that next guy stepping in to be the main man. And then in a couple of years after that, you're selling him for big money, and the next guy comes through. That's the production line we've been talking about. And I think that's the best way to do it. If we were to, as you're saying, the way those balls that Ryder plays, Kyogo would have a field day on him, 100%. I think he's more a Rodgers type of midfielder. So it's a completely different horses for courses sort of thing if it's a guy in the middle of the park than it is if it's a winger. Like we were talking about 25 million for Jota, but then, we've only brought in Yang and Tilio you put that together, what's that, like £3.5-4 million? And so people think we've downgraded there, but we've got two great prospects coming up. So it's a matter of we're not going to go and spend crazy money on a winger, but you could even get that money. You get the 15, you get 20, 30 million coming in, you spend 15 on Ryder. If you wanted to go get Tete as a winger who's free, if he's still available, you bring him in and it's just wages because he's on a free. And then suddenly next thing you know, you've reinvested that and you've got two quality players, plus you've got their next guys coming in behind them off the bench, with Yang and Tilio and coming in behind Tete on the wing, and then you've got Holm coming in behind Ryder there. You're setting yourselves up for the next 4 or 5 years. But as Robert Gibson says, Chairman Peter L. McScrooge only deals in pennies, no pounds. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, you can certainly see that sort of model starting to sort of come to fruition. I mean, we sold Jota for 25 million, and Abada is now stepping up to the plate where Jota's left, the void that Jota has left. And I think it might work out well for Brendan Rodgers because we know Brendan Rodgers likes his wingers to be a bit more direct and fast paced. See Scott Sinclair back in the day. You now got Dyson Maeda and Abada. We have got a lot of pace in the wings. So yeah, and then you take in the likes of Yang. Like Yang really good at the weekend. He came in. He's got some nice touches. He had a bit of determination. He showed that when he got to the byline and got the ball cut across for O'Reilly's goal. So I think we're all right. I think the model is starting to sort of take shape. And like you say, if Hatate goes for 30 million and you can spend half that money, reinvest half that money on one more player to come in to complement the squad, then it's only ever going to get better. And then as you say, you can make that incremental increase in your spending as season in, season out. So I think we are on the right track with the player trading model, although might be getting a little bit antsy as towards when these signings are going to come in or not. Like, so hopefully it'll be pretty soon.
100%, Willie. Get it done, Celtic. Get it done. So, last thing for the pod. It looks like it's going to be a short one because I, didn't put as much on the run sheet because I thought Liam would go on a few tangents tonight with me about, what's being reported in Japan for Hatate and about the Kobayashi thing. So I factored in an extra 5 minutes for each of them for Liam's rants that we get on the Pot Noodle. Everyone looks forward to him. When he hears his back, he'll have a bit of a chuckle about it. So we're running a little ahead of schedule here, but all good. But I've got a question for you. Did you see the post from Odin Holm today on his Instagram after the game?
No, I actually removed myself from Instagram a few months ago because I just never use it. Like I only ever used to use it when I got banned from Facebook for chatting with people. So now I've now just decided I don't need Instagram anymore. So I haven't seen it, but I have seen on Twitter a few people having a go at him for being the new Cantwell, as it says. But I also find it funny that people are having a go at someone on social media for using social media. I also find that a little bit funny too. Like,
well, here's the actual post for those who haven't seen it. So it's not. I laughed when I saw this because I'm like, it's perfect. Like the words there, bitch be humble, sit down. Now, it's perfect because of the guy behind him, had done a bit of pushing and shoving and was a bit all over the place earlier in the game. But also the words there, like people think he's telling him to sit down and, call him a bitch and stuff like that. It's lyrics to a song at the end of the day. That's all it is. I don't necessarily agree with, putting it on blast, but if they all talk is you should respect your opponent and all this sort of stuff. I grew up playing basketball. I love trash talk. It's just part of it. All I have to say, I don't have a problem with it. Some people say it's classless. Some people will say it's tacky, whatever. It's not the Celtic way. But then those same people loves Latin. Those same people absolutely pile onto Cantwell for being TikTok Todd. And I think Cantwell is an absolute knob. I can't stand him, the stuff he does. But I honestly look at this and go, I don't see what Odin did as a massive issue because this guy was on the ground in the background of a picture and he put words from a Kendrick song. Clearly he likes the musician. So I don't have a problem with it. What's your thoughts now you've seen it, Willie?
I think it's quite good. It's kind of like the old WWF wrestling when they just throw out that comment straight away, and the fans are cheering him on and that. Like, I think it's quite good, and it's not like he's put on a black and white filter with eyelash filters on it too, like just to try and make everything look all pretty and that. Like, so, fair play to him, mate. He's done all right there. Like, I don't see any problem with it at all. None.
Well, there you have it. The view on that from Celtic Down Under is more of it. Now, I don't expect everyone to be like, oh, you win a treble. Now it means you can just call everyone you want a bitch or whatever. It's like, if you're going to have banter, that's the way I see it. Make it good banter. Don't make it be you're on TikTok dancing with, Cantwell. If you're going to do that, prepare to cop it. You're going to do that. You win a game. You get to a picture, song lyrics. It's social media. It's not real. As Michael McDonald has just said here, I 100% agree. Some people take it too serious. A couple of people I know who have cut up rough on it, the only nice way I can refer to them is some Celtic Dars who take social media a little bit too serious for my liking, but everyone's entitled to their opinion on whether they like it or don't like it. Just because I like it doesn't mean any other people on this pod don't have to like it too. They're entitled to their opinion. I just think it's some good banter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, there's no harm in a little bit of banter here and there, as long as you're not going too nasty and delving too deep into sort of situations that you shouldn't. Like, but I don't see any problem with it, none whatsoever. Like, I'd like to see a bit more of that, to be honest, like because it makes for good viewing.
We all complain, in particular, we all complain because players give very robotic interviews and they're all media trained and monotone like this in press conferences. Show some personality. I love this. That's the best part of it for me. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm good with it. Willie's good with it. Each make your own decision, but the comments section here looks pretty good with it too. Red Scotland, agree with you. I'd knee-high Cantwell if I was ever lucky enough to get 1 minute on the pitch with him. 100%. 100%, mate. It's the best. Good call of the day. So what we'll do, Willie, we'll wrap up the pod as usual with a final thought. So you got one ready, or do you want me to go first?
Nah, my final thought is plumbers, if you dig through electric cables, you should be made to touch them and see if they're still live or dead.
Fair call. And my one's pretty simple. All I want to do is just give a shout out to my wife. Absolute legend. That's all I'm going to say. Not kissing your ass or anything. She's just an absolute legend. So I'll just give her a shout out for once on the pod. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. We'll be back this time on Thursday. Until then, hail, hail.